A mother feels she is losing her daughter to a dangerous relationship. When the worst happens, an unexpected stranger becomes her only support. But what is born from this tragedy changes the lives of all three forever. Before listening to this incredible account, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more moving stories. The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning as usual, but Rose had already been awake for at least 15 minutes, staring at the ceiling of the small room she shared with her daughter in the suburban district of the capital city. At 45, her body knew by heart that routine which had been repeating for over a decade. She got up silently, careful not to wake Clara, who was sleeping soundly in the bed next to her. The 17-year-old girl had come home late the night before, and Rose preferred not to ask questions. In recent months, conversations between mother and daughter had become increasingly scarce, replaced by worried glances and silences heavy with tension. Rose knew something wasn't right, but Clara would close up like an oyster whenever she tried to get closer. She took a quick shower in the tiny bathroom, put on the impeccably ironed uniform from the night before, and left the house before 6 o'clock. The bus ride to the affluent neighborhood took almost 2 hours, time Rose used to mentally plan the day's tasks and inevitably worry about her daughter. Clara was no longer the sweet and communicative girl she used to be. Ever since she started dating Mark, an 18-year-old boy she had met at school, her personality had completely changed. She, who had always been studious and dreamy, now seemed constantly tense, irritable, and distant. Rose had tried to talk several times, but her daughter would always evade the conversation or simply leave the house. Arriving at the luxury building where she worked, Rose greeted the doorman with a discreet nod and went up to the 23rd floor. Victor's apartment was her second home, or perhaps even more familiar than her own house. She knew every corner, every object, every stain on the marble that insisted on appearing despite all her dedication to cleaning. Victor Anderson was a 52-year-old man, a successful entrepreneur in the technology sector. Widowed for more than 8 years, he lived alone in that 300-square-meter space, filled with expensive works of art and designer furniture, but which always seemed empty to Rose. He was polite, punctual with payments, never mistreated her, but also never went beyond the basic daily formalities. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," she would say every morning when he left for work. "Good morning, Rose," he would reply, always with the same cordial but distant tone. In 10 years of work, their conversations never went beyond that. He lived immersed in spreadsheets, virtual meetings, and business trips. When he was home, he would spend hours locked in his office or watching the news in the living room, always alone. Rose sometimes wondered if he missed company, but she quickly dismissed those thoughts. It wasn't her business. On that specific morning, Rose noticed that Victor was more tense than usual. He was checking his phone more frequently, sighing as he drank his coffee, and forgot his briefcase on the kitchen table, something unprecedented in all those years. When he returned to retrieve it, Rose was finishing cleaning the master suite bathroom. "Sorry, Rose. I forgot some important documents," he said, passing her on his way to the closet. Rose merely nodded and continued her work. She was accustomed to the silent routine of the house. Victor left early, returned late, and she took care of everything in between. It was a job that demanded perfection, but which she performed with pleasure. She had always been meticulous and dedicated, characteristics that Victor certainly appreciated, even if he never verbalized it. During the afternoon, while ironing clothes in the laundry room, Rose received a call from Clara's school. The secretary informed her that the girl had missed school again, the 3rd time that month. Rose felt her heart clench. Clara was lying to her, leaving home as if going to school, but going to places Rose couldn't even imagine. That night, Rose arrived home determined to have a serious conversation with her daughter. She found Clara in the kitchen, stirring a pot of instant soup. The girl was visibly thinner, with deep, dark circles under her eyes and a tired expression that didn't suit her 17 years. "Clara, I need to talk to you," Rose said, taking off her apron and sitting at the small kitchen table. "If it's about school, I already know." "I'll do better," Clara replied without looking at her mother, stirring the soup with mechanical movements. "It's not just about school, daughter. It's about you, about us, about what's happening in your life." Clara finally looked up, and Rose was startled by what she saw. There was a deep sadness in her daughter's gaze, mixed with something she couldn't immediately identify. Fear, perhaps. "Mom, it's nothing big. It's just a difficult phase. Everyone has them," Clara said, trying to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Clara, I'm your mother. I've known you since you were born. I know when something is wrong," Rose insisted, reaching her hand across the table in an attempt to touch her daughter. But Clara pulled away, abruptly standing up from the table. "Mom, please, I'm just tired, that's all. Mark and I have had some arguments, but that's normal in relationships. You wouldn't understand anyway," Clara said, washing the bowl in the sink with more force than necessary. "Why wouldn't I understand? You can trust me." "Because you've never had a real relationship, Mom. You've never known what it's like to have someone truly love you," Clara exploded, turning to Rose with tears in her eyes. The words hit Rose like a punch to the stomach. It was true that she had raised Clara alone, that she had never had a lasting relationship, but the way her daughter said it hurt her deeply. "I have you," Rose replied softly. "You are the truest love of my life." Clara seemed shaken by her mother's response, but soon hardened again. "Sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to talk like that. I need some time. Mark is picking me up soon. We're going to talk and sort things out." "Clara, it's getting late. Why don't you talk tomorrow?" "Because it can't be tomorrow," Clara yelled, once again losing control. "Sorry, it's just important. He said if I don't go today, he'll be very upset." Rose watched her daughter carefully. There was something in the way Clara spoke about Mark that deeply bothered her. It was as if she was afraid of disappointing him, afraid of his reactions. "All right," Rose conceded against her maternal instincts, "but please send me a message when you get home, no matter what time it is." Clara nodded quickly and rushed to her room to get ready. 20 minutes later, she left the house without a proper goodbye, just shouting a "bye, Mom" from the hallway. Rose was left alone in the kitchen, a bad feeling growing in her chest. She knew her daughter like no one else, and she knew something was terribly wrong. Clara was too thin, too nervous, and that story about normal arguments didn't convince her. She spent the rest of the night awake, waiting for the message that never came. At 3 in the morning, she tried to call her daughter's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. The bad feeling turned into panic. When the alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning, Rose hadn't slept a minute. Clara hadn't come. Home wasn't answering messages or calls. Rose was desperate, but she had to go to work. She couldn't afford to miss it and lose the job that supported both of them. Throughout the commute to work, Rose tried to stay calm, creating optimistic scenarios in her head. Maybe Clara had stayed at a friend's house. Maybe she had decided to sleep at her boyfriend's and forgotten to let her know. Maybe her phone battery had died. But when she arrived at Victor's apartment and saw her own reflection in the entrance hall mirror, she knew she wouldn't be able to hide her distress. Her eyes were red and swollen. There were deep, dark circles on her face, and her hands trembled slightly. Victor was in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet, when Rose entered. He looked up, and for the first time in 10 years truly looked at her. Not just a casual good morning glance, but the gaze of someone who perceives that something is wrong. "Rose," he said, with a surprised expression. "Is everything all right?" Rose tried to smile and assume her usual professional demeanor, but her words came out shaky. "Yes, Mr. Anderson. Sorry, I didn't sleep very well last night." Victor observed her for a few more seconds, as if processing the information. It was the first time Rose had shown any sign of vulnerability in front of him, and also the first time he had shown genuine interest in her well-being. "Are you sure you don't look well?" he insisted, putting his tablet aside. Rose felt tears threaten to spill. Victor's unexpected kindness, coupled with the despair she felt for her daughter, almost broke her defenses. But she managed to control herself. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Anderson. It's just tiredness, really. I'll start cleaning the living room." Victor nodded but continued to observe her with a thoughtful expression as she walked away. Something had changed in that moment. An invisible barrier had cracked, but neither of them yet knew the extent of what was to come. The day dragged on agonizingly for Rose. With each passing minute without news of Clara, her anxiety increased. She tried to focus on household chores, but found herself standing in the middle of rooms, cleaning cloth in hand, lost in dark thoughts about where her daughter might be. Victor had left for a series of important meetings, but before departing he approached her in an unprecedented way. "Rose, if you need to leave for any reason today, you may go. Don't worry about the tasks," he said, with a kindness that surprised her. Rose thanked him politely, but did not accept the offer. She needed to keep busy so as not to go mad with worry. During the afternoon, she alternated between obsessively cleaning the same furniture and checking her phone every few minutes, hoping for some sign from Clara. Meanwhile, Clara was living her own nightmare. The previous night with Mark had been harder than she had imagined. They met at a bar near the central subway station, and from the start she noticed he was different, more aggressive, more possessive, more controlling. "You're avoiding me, Clara. I don't like that," Mark said, holding her wrist with more force than necessary as they walked. "I'm not avoiding you, it's just that I need to focus on my studies. My mum is worried about my grades," Clara replied, trying to discreetly free her arm. Your mom. Always her. When will you realize that I'm the one who truly cares about you? Your mom just wants to control you, to keep me away from you." Clara knew this speech. In recent months, Mark had been trying to convince her that Rose was a negative influence in her life, that she needed to choose between her mother and him. With each encounter, the pressure increased. They spent the entire night talking, or rather, with Mark talking, and her trying to calm him down. He was convinced that Rose was poisoning Clara's mind against him, that she was sabotaging their relationship. Around 3 in the morning, Mark finally let her go, but not before, making her promise not to tell her mother anything about her concerns regarding the relationship. Clara spent the rest of the night walking through the empty streets of the capital city without the courage to go home and face her mother. She knew Rose would be worried, but she also knew it would be impossible to explain without revealing what was truly happening. How could she say she was afraid of her own boyfriend? When the sun rose, Clara was physically and emotionally exhausted. She hadn't eaten anything in the last 12 hours, had only slept 2 hours in the last 48, and felt completely lost about what to do with her life. She decided to go to school, even knowing she would miss the first classes. Perhaps she could talk to a teacher, or simply have a few hours of normalcy before facing her problems again. On the subway during the morning rush hour, Clara struggled to stay on her feet. The crowd pushed her from side to side, the mixed smell of sweat and perfume made her nauseous, and the shortness of breath began to seriously bother her. She tried to lean against one of the platform columns, but the dizziness was becoming increasingly intense. Victor, for his part, rarely used public transport. That morning, however, his driver had been absent due to family problems, and his most important meeting was to be in a building near the central station. He decided it would be quicker to take the subway than to face the chaotic traffic of the capital city. He was descending the station stairs when he heard a growing murmur in the crowd. People began to gather around something, and he heard someone shouting to call an ambulance. Moved by an impulse he couldn't explain, Victor approached the group of people. In the center of the circle, a young girl lay on the ground, unconscious. For a few seconds he thought she looked familiar, but it was only when he bent down to help that he recognized her face. "Clara!" he exclaimed, without thinking how strange it was to know a teenager in a situation like that. The people around looked at him with curiosity, but Victor ignored them. He knelt beside the girl and checked her breathing and pulse. She was alive, but clearly weakened. Her skin was pale, almost transparent, and he noticed she was significantly thinner than he remembered seeing her in the rare moments she visited her mother at work. "Has anyone called an ambulance yet?" Victor asked loudly to the crowd. "Yes, they're on their way," a woman replied. Victor took off his jacket and placed it under Clara's head, trying to make her more comfortable. While waiting for the ambulance, he observed the girl in more detail. There was something on her arm that bothered him, marks that looked like grip marks, already yellowish, indicating they were a few days old. When the ambulance arrived, Victor identified himself as a family acquaintance and asked which hospital they would take her to. The paramedics informed him it would be the nearest public hospital, and Victor decided to follow them. At the hospital, while Clara was receiving medical attention, Victor called Rose. It was the longest 15 seconds of his life, trying to find words to explain the situation without causing unnecessary panic. "Rose, it's Victor. I need you to come to Central Hospital as quickly as possible. Clara is all right, but she needed medical attention. I'll explain everything when you get here." On the other end of the line, Rose felt her world collapse. All her worst fears had come true in a matter of seconds. She barely managed to stammer a "I'm on my way" before hanging up the phone. Rose's journey to the hospital was a blur of despair and guilt. How had she let Clara go out the night before knowing something was wrong? Why hadn't she insisted more for her daughter to talk to her? The questions hammered in her head as the taxi crossed the city. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Victor in the emergency room waiting area. He was sitting still in his crumpled dress shirt with hands soiled from the subway station floor. Seeing her, he immediately stood up. "Rose, she's stable. The doctors are running some tests, but they said there's no danger to her life," were Victor's first words, and Rose felt her legs go weak with relief. "What happened? How did you—" Rose managed to ask, still trying to process the situation. "She fainted at the subway station. I happened to be there and recognized her. I brought her here and called you immediately." Rose looked at Victor with a gratitude she couldn't express in words. For all those years, he had been just her employer. In that moment, he was the man who saved her daughter. "Can I see her?" Rose asked. "The doctors said she should wake up soon. We'll wait together." For the first time in 10 years, Rose and Victor sat side by side, not as employer and employee, but as two people concerned about Clara's well-being. The silence between them was different from the usual silence of the house. It was laden with emotion, genuine concern, humanity. "She was very thin, Rose," Victor said softly after a few minutes. "And I saw some marks on her arm. Do you know if she's been hurting herself or—" Rose closed her eyes, feeling guilt consume her. "I knew something was wrong. In recent weeks she had been different, more withdrawn, more nervous. I tried to talk several times, but she always evaded the conversation." "It's not your fault," Victor said, and Rose was surprised by the gentleness in his voice. "Teenagers can be very complicated. The important thing is that she's going to be okay." A nurse approached them. "Patient Clara just woke up. She's asking for her mother." Rose quickly stood up, but hesitated for a second. She looked at Victor, who had done all that for a girl he barely knew, and felt a strange emotion taking over her chest. "Thank you very much," she said, with a sincerity that made Victor realize there was much more behind those two simple words. "You don't need to thank me. Go be with your daughter. I'll wait here to find out how she's doing." Rose entered the room where Clara lay, connected to some machines. The girl looked even more fragile in that hospital setting, and Rose felt her heart break. "Mom," Clara said, softly when she saw her and began to cry. Rose approached the bed and took her daughter's hand, noticing how cold and thin it was. "I'm here, my love." "You're safe now," Rose said, kissing Clara's forehead. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Clara began between sobs. "About Mark, about what's been happening to me." Rose prepared to hear what her maternal intuition had suspected for weeks. Outside the room, Victor waited patiently, unaware that that moment would mark the beginning of a profound transformation in all their lives. The doctor arrived with the test results: malnutrition, dehydration, clear, signs of extreme stress, and the marks Victor had noticed were indeed signs of physical aggression. Rose felt a fury she had never experienced before, mixed with a maternal protectiveness that made her decide that from that moment on, she would do anything necessary to protect her daughter. When they left the room to talk to the doctor, Victor was still there. Rose looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something more, something she couldn't yet name. He had appeared in their lives like a guardian angel at the most critical moment. "How is she?" Victor asked, standing up as he saw them. "She'll be fine," Rose replied, "but she'll need some special care in the coming weeks." Victor nodded, and for the first time, Rose noticed something different in his eyes. There was genuine concern there, a humanity she had never perceived in all those years of formal coexistence. "If you need anything," "Anything at all, you can come to me," Victor said, and Rose knew he was serious. In that moment, standing in the corridor of a public hospital, two completely different worlds began to draw closer, in a way neither of them could have imagined. What had started as an accident of fate was about to change their lives forever. In the days that followed the hospital incident, the dynamic in Victor's house changed completely. Rose missed work for the first time in 10 years to take care of her daughter, and when she returned 3 days later, Victor received her in a completely different way. "How is Clara doing?" was his first question, even before the usual greeting. "Better, thank you. She's still recovering, but she can already eat normally," Rose replied, surprised by the genuine interest in his voice. On that first night, at the hospital, after the doctors released Clara to go home with a recommendation for absolute rest, Rose finally heard the whole truth about her daughter's relationship with Mark. Clara's words had echoed in her mind ever since. "Mum, Mark isn't who I thought he was," Clara had begun, still lying on the hospital gurney. "At first, he was sweet, attentive, made me feel special, but little by little, he started to change." Rose remembered how her heart had tightened upon hearing the details. Mark had started by isolating Clara from her friends, then criticizing her clothes, her opinions, her choices. Gradually, he began to control where she went, who she talked to, what she ate. "He said it was because he loved me too much, that he was jealous, because I was very important to him," Clara had explained, tears streaming down her face. "And I believed it, Mom. I thought that's how love worked." The marks on Clara's arm were the result of the past few weeks, when she tried to question some of Mark's attitudes. He would hold her tightly during arguments, leaving marks that she hid with long sleeves. The night before she fainted, he had threatened to do something worse if she continued disobeying. Rose had listened to everything in silence, torn between fury and relief at finally knowing the truth. When Clara finished telling her story, Rose held her daughter's hands and made a solemn promise. Never again would she be subjected to that situation. Now back at work, Rose tried to maintain her normal routine, but she noticed that Victor observed her more closely. He asked about Clara, offered help, showed a kindness she had never experienced from him. "Rose," Victor said that first afternoon back at work, "I'd like to talk to you when you finish your tasks. It's nothing formal, just a conversation." Rose's heart quickened. In 10 years, Victor had never asked to talk to her beyond work-related matters. She spent the rest of the day nervous, wondering what he could want. When she finished cleaning, she found Victor in the living room, not sitting in his usual armchair, but on the sofa with a more relaxed posture. He gestured for her to sit in the armchair opposite, breaking yet another invisible barrier that had always existed between them. "How are you feeling, Rose? I know it's been a difficult few days," Victor began, and she noticed he called her by her first name more frequently since the hospital. "I'm fine, Mr. Anderson. Clara is recovering, and that's the most important thing. You can just call me Victor, Rose. After what we've been through together at the hospital, I think excessive formalities no longer make sense." Rose felt a warmth rise to her face. The change in address was symbolic of something bigger happening between them. "Victor," she said, testing the name without the Mr. in front, "thank you very much again for helping Clara. If it weren't for you—" "You don't need to keep thanking me. Anyone would do the same," Victor interrupted. "But I want you to know that if you need any kind of help to protect Clara from this young man, you can count on me." Rose looked at him in surprise. How did he know about Mark? "At the hospital, while you were talking to the doctors, Clara woke up and told me a few things," Victor explained. "She was scared, thinking the young man might show up there. I assured her she was safe." "She told you about Mark?" Rose asked softly. "Enough for me to understand that she's in a dangerous situation, and that you, as a mother, must be desperate not knowing how to protect her." Rose felt her eyes fill with tears. That was exactly what she was feeling, a deep despair of not knowing how to keep her daughter safe. "She's afraid to leave the house," Rose confessed. "Mark has been calling constantly, sending messages, even showed up in front of our building once. Clara doesn't want to go to school anymore, doesn't want to go out alone." Victor leaned forward with a serious expression. Rose, I want to make a proposal. I know it might sound strange coming from me, but I'm serious. Clara can stay here at my house during the day while you work. It's safe, there's 24-hour concierge service, and she wouldn't be alone at home vulnerable to unwelcome visits. Rose remained silent, processing the offer. It was too generous, too unexpected. I can't accept that, Rose finally said. It's already too much what you've done for us. Rose, Victor said, and there was something in his voice she had never heard before. In 10 years you've taken care of my house as if it were your own. You've been punctual, dedicated, efficient, even when I was traveling for weeks. You deserve for someone to take care of you too. Victor's words touched Rose in a way she hadn't expected. No one had ever talked about taking care of her. She had always been the one doing the caring, for her daughter, for the house, for others. Furthermore, Victor continued, I have a home office that's empty during the day. Clara could use it to study, to catch up on lost studies. And I know some lawyers specializing in cases like this if you decide to take legal action. Rose looked at Victor as if seeing him for the first time. For all those years, she had thought of him as a distant employer, closed off in his own world. Now she realized there was much more depth to him than she had imagined. Why are you doing this for us? Rose asked, genuinely curious. Victor hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. When I saw Clara on the station floor, unconscious, something changed in me. I realized I've been living in a bubble for years, focused only on work, ignoring everything around me, including important people who were right in front of me. He looked directly at Rose when he said this, and she felt something stir in her chest. You and Clara are not just people who work or frequent my home. You've been a part of my life for a decade. It's time for me to acknowledge that and act like someone who cares. That night, Rose returned home with her head full of confused thoughts. She found Clara in the kitchen, preparing tea, looking much better than in recent days. Mom, Victor called earlier, Clara said. He invited me to stay at his house during the day, said I could use the office to study. You spoke with him? I did. And you know what, Mom? He seems like a very kind person, different from what I imagined. Rose sat next to her daughter at the kitchen table. And what do you think of his proposal? Clara was silent for a moment, stirring her tea. I think it would be good. I'd feel safer, and I could go back to studying without fear. And also, I think it would be good for you. For me? How so? Mom, you've spent your whole life taking care of me, working to support me. You never had time for yourself, never had anyone to take care of you. Maybe it's time to accept help. Rose looked at her daughter with admiration. Even after everything she had been through, Clara still worried about her mother's well-being. Are you sure you want to do this? Rose asked. I am. And Mom, I also want us to find a lawyer about Mark. I don't want to be afraid of him anymore. I want him to pay for what he did to me. Rose held her daughter's hand, feeling immense pride in the courage Clara was demonstrating. The next day, Clara accompanied Rose to work. Victor welcomed them warmly, showed Clara the office, explained how the building's security system worked, and left the phone numbers for the concierge and himself for any emergency. If you feel any discomfort or insecurity, call me immediately, Victor told Clara. And that goes for you too, he said to Rose. During the first few days, Rose was tense, worried if Clara was okay, if she was bothering Victor, if the situation was sustainable. But gradually she realized something special was happening. Clara was visibly more relaxed and secure. She had resumed her studies with discipline, was eating better, and had even called some old school friends. The safety of the environment was allowing her to recover both physically and emotionally. And Rose was also changing. Conversations with Victor became more frequent and natural. He asked about her life, shared stories about his work, and sometimes they had lunch together while Clara studied in the office. One afternoon, while Rose was preparing dinner, Victor arrived home from work earlier than usual. He found Clara in the living room, reading a book, and Rose in the kitchen. How were your studies today? He asked Clara. Very good. I managed to finish all the math material I was behind on, and the lawyer you recommended called. He wants to schedule a meeting for next week. Victor nodded, satisfied. Then he headed to the kitchen where Rose was preparing a risotto. It smells very good, he said, approaching the stove. "It's mushroom risotto. I hope you like it," Rose replied, noticing that Victor was closer to her than usual. "Can I help?" he asked, something he had never done before. Rose hesitated for a moment, but then smiled. "You can chop the tomatoes for the salad." They worked side by side in the kitchen, in a comfortable silence. Rose was hyper-aware of Victor's presence beside her, of the occasional brush of their hands when he passed something to her, of the aroma of his masculine cologne mixed with the smell of the food. "Rose," Victor said softly, as he chopped the tomatoes, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course," she replied, stirring the risotto. "Have you ever allowed yourself to be happy? I mean truly happy, not just content, with fulfilling your obligations?" The question caught Rose by surprise. She stopped stirring the risotto and looked at Victor. "I'm not sure I understand the question," she said. "In all these years, you've always been so dedicated, so focused on taking care of everyone around you. But what about you? When was the last time someone took care of you? When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" Rose remained silent, thinking. She couldn't remember an answer to any of Victor's questions. "I think I forgot how to be happy for myself," she confessed, softly. Victor stopped chopping the tomatoes and turned to her completely. "Then maybe it's time for you to remember," he said, with an intensity that made Rose feel butterflies in her stomach. The weeks that followed were marked by a gradual but profound transformation in the lives of the three. Clara was visibly stronger, both physically and emotionally. The lawyer recommended by Victor, Alan Miller, had proven extremely competent and sensitive to the case. In just 2 weeks, he secured a protective order against Mark, who was prohibited from approaching Clara or attempting any kind of contact. "He tried to call you last night," Rose told Victor during lunch, "but when he saw it was a number from the law firm, he hung up immediately." "That's a good sign. It means he's taking the protective order seriously," Victor replied, pouring more wine for Rose. Lunches together had become a routine. While Clara studied intently in the office, Rose and Victor talked about everything, from trivial daily matters to childhood memories, abandoned dreams, and deep fears. Rose discovered that Victor had lost his wife in a car accident 8 years ago, and since then had emotionally isolated himself from any possibility of a new relationship. He discovered that Rose had become pregnant with Clara very young, at 28, and that the girl's father had never been present in their lives. "Have you never thought about getting married again? Having other children?" Victor asked one afternoon as they had coffee on the balcony. "Honestly, I never had time to think about it," Rose replied. "Clara was always my priority, and working to support her took all my energy." "And you? Have you never thought about rebuilding your love life?" Victor remained silent for a long moment, looking at the horizon. "I thought I would never be able to love anyone again," he said softly. "I thought I had lost that capacity along with my wife." "And now?" Rose asked, feeling her heart quicken. Victor looked directly into her eyes. "Now I'm discovering that I was wrong." The tension between them was becoming palpable. Rose felt a growing attraction to Victor, something that frightened and thrilled her at the same time. She had never been involved with a man like him, kind, attentive, intellectually stimulating, and it was clear the feeling was reciprocal. One evening, after Clara had gone to bed, early, Rose was finishing cleaning the kitchen when Victor approached. "Rose," he said, "I'd like to show you something." He led her to the balcony, where he had prepared a surprise. Small lights were strung around the area, creating an intimate and cozy atmosphere. Soft music played quietly on the sound system. "What is this?" Rose asked, surprised and moved. "It's a way to show you how special you are," Victor said, approaching her. "In all these years, you've taken care of everything and everyone. Today, it's my turn to take care of you." He had prepared a simple but elegant supper, with candles and wine glasses. Rose felt like a princess, something she had never experienced in her entire life. "Victor, this is too beautiful. You didn't have to," she began. "Yes, I did," he gently interrupted, pulling out a chair for her to sit down. "You deserve to be treated like the special woman you are." During dinner, they talked about dreams they had abandoned, about how their lives had changed since the encounter at the hospital, about how comfortable they felt with each other in a way they never imagined possible. "Rose," Victor said when they finished, eating. "I need to tell you something." Rose's heart pounded. "What is it?" "I'm falling in love with you," he confessed, taking her hand across the table. "And I know it might seem complicated because of our history, because of the differences between our worlds, but I can no longer pretend this isn't happening." Rose felt tears form in her eyes. "Victor, you don't need to answer now," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know how I feel." Rose looked at their hands intertwined on the table, at the man who had become so important in her life in such a short time. "Me too," she whispered. "I'm falling in love with you too." Victor smiled in a way Rose had never seen before. He stood up, walked around the table, and gently pulled her to her feet. They looked into each other's eyes for a long moment before Victor brought his face close to hers. Their first kiss was soft, hesitant, full of tenderness and unspoken promises. Rose felt as if she was waking from a long sleep, discovering sensations and emotions she had forgotten existed. When they parted, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want this to be just a moment," he whispered. "Me neither," Rose replied. In the following days, their relationship deepened naturally. Victor became more affectionate, more present, more attentive to Rose's needs. She, in turn, allowed herself to be cared for the first time in many years, discovering a feminine and sensual side she had repressed for so long. Clara initially didn't notice the change in the dynamic between her mother and Victor. She was too focused on her own recovery and studies, but after a few weeks she began to notice the exchanged glances, the whispered conversations, the different happiness on her mother's face. One afternoon, while Rose was preparing a snack, Clara approached with a serious expression. "Mom, can I talk to you?" "Of course, daughter. What is it?" "You and Victor. Are you dating?" Rose felt her face flush. She and Victor hadn't officially defined their relationship yet, but it was obvious something special was happening between them. "Why are you asking that?" Rose tried to deflect. "Because it's obvious, Mom. You look at each other differently, you talk softly, and you have a happiness on your face that I haven't seen in years." Sighed and sat next to her daughter. "Clara, I know it might seem strange." "Mom," Clara interrupted, "do you think I'm against it? That I'm upset?" Rose looked at her daughter with surprise. "And you're not?" "On the contrary," Clara said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "Mom, Victor saved my life. Welcomed us when we needed it most, gave me security to recover. He clearly cares a lot about you. And most importantly, I've never seen you so happy." Rose felt her eyes fill with tears of relief. "I was afraid you would feel betrayed or that you would think I was neglecting you," Rose confessed. "Mom, you spent 17 years of your life dedicating yourself exclusively to me. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have someone take care of you. And if that someone is Victor, I can only be happy for you both." That night, Rose told Victor about her conversation with Clara. They were sitting on the living room sofa, she leaning against his chest, listening to classical music. "She really said that?" Victor asked, caressing Rose's hair. "She did. And you know what else she said? That you're like a father she never had but always wanted." Victor was moved by Clara's words. In recent weeks, he had developed a genuine affection for the girl, proud of her recovery, of her courage in facing Mark legally, of her determination to rebuild her life. "Rose," Victor said, "I need to ask you an important question." Rose straightened up to look him in the eyes. "What is it?" "Would you like to get to know a bit of my world? I mean, go out from here, go to some places I frequent, meet some important people to me?" Rose hesitated. The social difference between them had always been present in her mind, even if Victor never made her feel inferior. "Victor, your world is very different from mine. I don't know if I would fit in." "Rose," he said, taking her face in his hands, "my world only makes sense if you're in it. And I want you to meet my friends. I want them to see the incredible woman I've fallen in love with." "What if they don't accept me? What if they find it strange that you're with your former housekeeper?" "First, you're not my former housekeeper. You're the woman I love. Second, If someone can't see how special you are, then that person doesn't deserve to be part of my life." The declaration of love was said so naturally that Rose took a few seconds to process the words. "You love me?" she asked softly. "I do," Victor replied without hesitation. "I love your strength, your dedication, your kindness. I love how you are a mother, how you take care of everything and everyone. I love your laugh, your silences, the way you make me feel alive again." Rose began to cry, but they were tears of happiness. "I love you, too," she whispered. "I love how you make me feel special, how you take care of me and Clara. I love your patience, your generosity, the way you've changed our lives." They kissed with a passion that had been growing for weeks, sealing a declaration that would change their destinies forever. The following weekend, Victor took Rose to dinner at an elegant restaurant in the heart of the capital city. Rose dressed in a gown Victor had bought for her, feeling beautiful and confident in a way she had never experienced. At the restaurant, Victor introduced Rose to some entrepreneur, friends as the most special woman in my life. Rose was nervous at first, but soon realized that Victor had chosen genuinely kind people who welcomed her with cordiality and respect. "She's lovely, Victor," commented Agnes, the wife of one of Victor's partners. "It's been a long time since we've seen you so happy." During dinner, Rose found herself naturally participating in the conversations, discovering that she had interesting opinions on various subjects and that her life experience brought a valuable perspective to the group. "Victor told us you have a teenage daughter," commented Philip, another friend. "It must be challenging to raise a daughter alone." "It is challenging, but it's also the greatest joy of my life," Rose replied sincerely. "Clara taught me more about love and strength than I ever imagined possible." "She inherited her mother's beauty and elegance," Victor said, intertwining his fingers with Rose's across the table. By the end of the night, Rose felt confident and integrated. Victor had introduced her with pride, treated her as an equal, and shown her that true love transcends social barriers. "Thank you for this evening," Rose said as they drove home in Victor's car. "Thank you for giving me the chance to show the world the incredible woman you are," Victor replied, kissing her hand. When they arrived home, they found Clara watching television in the living room. She looked at her mother, elegant and radiant, and smiled. "How was dinner?" she asked. "It was perfect," Rose replied, sitting next to her daughter on the sofa. "And Victor's friends? Were they nice to you?" "They were wonderful. And you know what? I discovered that I'm not as different from them as I imagined." Victor sat on the other side of Clara, creating a family image that all three were learning to cherish. "You know," Clara said, looking at both of them, "I never imagined my life could change so drastically. 2 months ago, I was trapped in a relationship that was destroying me. Today, I feel safe, loved, and part of a real family." Victor and Rose looked at each other over Clara's head, both moved by the girl's words. "We truly are a family," Victor said, "and we will continue to be, no matter what happens." That night, for the first time since they had romantically known each other, Rose slept in Victor's arms, feeling complete in a way she had never imagined possible. The following months brought even deeper changes for the trio. Clara not only fully recovered from the trauma with Mark, but also flourished in a way that surprised everyone. She resumed her studies with renewed dedication, made new friends at school, and even started participating in a support group for young people who had experienced abusive relationships. "Mum, I want to do something to help other girls who are going through what I went through," Clara said one afternoon while studying in Victor's office. "Maybe create a blog or participate in lectures at schools." Rose was proud of her daughter's maturity and solidarity, but also a little worried. "Are you sure you're ready to relive those experiences by helping other people?" "Yes, I am, Mum. In fact, I think it's precisely because I went through it that I can help. I know how hard it is to recognize you're in a bad relationship, how scary it is to ask for help." Victor, who had been listening to the conversation, approached them. "Clara, if you really want to do this, I can help you get in touch with some NGOs that work with this type of situation, and I can also finance the creation of a more structured project." "Seriously?" Clara asked, her eyes shining. "Seriously. I think your experience can save many other girls." That's how the New Beginnings Project was born, an initiative that combined lectures in schools, free psychological counseling for teenagers, and an online channel where young people could share experiences and ask for help anonymously. Clara became the project's spokesperson, telling her story with courage and encouraging other girls to seek help. The project's success brought unexpected visibility to Clara, who was invited to give interviews on television and radio programs. Rose followed everything with a mixture of pride and admiration for her daughter's strength. "She's becoming an incredible young woman," Victor commented one evening after watching an interview with Clara on a local news program. "She always was incredible," Rose replied. "She just needed to find her voice again." As Clara grew and gained independence, Rose also underwent her own transformations. Victor encouraged her to return to her studies, and she enrolled in a social project management course, discovering a passion for organization and leadership she had never explored. "You have a natural talent for coordinating people and resources," Victor said after Rose presented her first course project. "Have you ever thought about working professionally in social project management?" The idea haunted Rose for weeks. After so many years working as a housekeeper, the possibility of a different career seemed an impossible dream. "Victor, I appreciate your trust, but I don't know if I have enough preparation for this kind of work," she confessed. "Rose, you managed a household impeccably for 10 years, raised an exemplary daughter alone, organized Clara's emotional recovery, and still found time to fall in love and build a solid relationship. If that's not complex project management, I don't know what is." Victor's words made Rose reconsider her own capabilities. Perhaps she truly had skills she had never formally recognized. The opportunity arose when Victor decided to create a foundation dedicated to supporting women in situations of social vulnerability. He offered Rose the position of general coordinator for the project. "Me?" Rose asked, incredulous. "Victor, are you sure? That's an enormous responsibility." "I'm absolutely sure. I want someone who practically understands the challenges these women face, someone who has lived through these difficulties and managed to overcome them, someone I trust completely." Rose accepted the challenge, and in the following month she dedicated herself to structuring the foundation with a passion that surprised her. She interviewed dozens of women, organized professional training programs, created partnerships with companies willing to offer job opportunities, and developed a system of psychological and legal support. "You know," Rose said to Victor one evening, after a particularly productive day at the foundation, "I never imagined I could feel so professionally fulfilled. For all these years I thought my worth was only in serving and caring for others." "And now?" Victor asked, massaging Rose's tense shoulders. "Now I see that I can serve and care for others in much broader ways. I can truly make a difference in the lives of hundreds of women." Victor smiled, proud of Rose's transformation. She had discovered her own strength and potential, and that made her even more attractive in his eyes. But not everything was simple during this period. There were moments of tension and difficult adjustments. One evening, Clara arrived home visibly upset. "What happened, daughter?" Rose asked, concerned. "I had an argument with Olivia today," Clara said, referring to one of the friends she had recently made. "About what?" "She said, I'm getting too big for my britches because of the project, that I've changed since we moved here. She said I forgot where I came from." Rose felt her heart clench. This was exactly the kind of situation she feared, that the changes in their lives would create problems in Clara's old relationships. "And what did you say to her?" "I said I haven't forgotten where I came from, but I'm also not going to apologize for being in a better place now. I said she should be happy for my successes, not resentful." Victor, who had been listening to the conversation from the living room, approached. "May I offer an opinion?" he asked delicately. Clara nodded. "Growing and changing sometimes means leaving some people behind, unfortunately. Not everyone can keep up with our evolution, and some are bothered by our success. The important thing is for you to maintain your essence, be grateful for what you have, but not diminish yourself to make others feel better." "It's difficult," Clara confessed. "Olivia was one of my best friends." "She was," Rose said softly. "And if she's truly your friend, she'll overcome her jealousy and start supporting you again. If not, perhaps the friendship wasn't as solid as you thought. Clara reflected on her mother's and Victor's words. A few weeks later, Olivia sought her out to apologize, admitting she was envious of Clara's achievements. The friendship was rekindled, but on different, more mature and honest terms. Another challenge arose when Rose had to face comments from some people in her former neighborhood. She still kept in touch with some neighbors, and not all of them reacted positively to the changes in her life. "Rose is getting too big for her britches, since she's with that rich guy," commented Anne, an old neighbor, to other women in the market line. "She forgot her friends, doesn't come around the neighborhood anymore." When Rose learned of the comments through a friend, she felt hurt and confused. She had tried hard to stay in touch with the important people from her previous life, but she recognized that her routine had changed drastically. "Victor," she said that night, "sometimes I feel guilty for being so happy, as if I don't deserve all this happening in my life." Victor pulled her to the sofa and made her sit beside him. "Rose, you've worked your entire life, sacrificed your dreams for others, raised a wonderful daughter alone, maintained your dignity and kindness even when facing enormous difficulties. If anyone deserves happiness, it's you. But what about the people left behind? The friends who didn't have the same opportunities? You can help them, and you are doing so through the foundation. But you can't sacrifice yourself eternally because of guilt. Your happiness doesn't diminish theirs, just as your success doesn't harm them. It's hard not to feel guilty sometimes. It's normal to feel that. It shows you have a good heart. But don't let guilt sabotage your happiness." Rose was learning to navigate these complex feelings, finding a balance between gratitude for the present and social responsibility for the past. The relationship between her and Victor was also evolving into something even deeper. They began to talk about the future, about long-term plans, about the possibility of making their relationship official. "Rose," Victor said one Saturday evening as they dined at home, "I'd like to introduce you to my family." Rose choked on her wine. "Your family? I didn't even know you had close family." "I have a brother who lives in a rural town, Peter. He has 2 teenage children. We don't talk much, but recently he got in touch wanting to reconnect. And you want me to meet them?" "I do. Peter is coming to the capital city next weekend with his children. I'd like them to have dinner with us, you and Clara too." Rose became nervous at the prospect. Meeting Victor's family meant that the relationship was becoming even more serious. "Victor, what if they don't like me? What if they find it strange that you're with me?" "Rose, Peter knows me. He knows I would never get seriously involved with someone who wasn't special, and the boys are teenagers like Clara. They'll get along just fine." The following week, Rose anxiously prepared for the meeting. Clara helped her choose her outfit, do her hair, and even gave her tips on how to talk to teenagers. "Mom, relax. You're amazing. Anyone who can't see that is blind," Clara said, helping Rose choose between 2 dresses. "Thank you, daughter. Sometimes I feel like you're more mature than I am. We grow together, don't we? You taught me to be strong, now it's my turn to teach you to be confident." When Peter arrived, with his children Luke and Aaron, Rose was surprised by the resemblance between the brothers. Peter had Victor's same kindness, though he was more outgoing and relaxed. "Victor told me a lot about you," Peter said to Rose, gallantly kissing her hand. "He said he found the woman of his life." Rose blushed but smiled. "He exaggerates." "I don't exaggerate at all," Victor said, putting his arm around Rose's waist. "Peter, this is the most incredible woman I've ever met." Dinner was a success. Peter showed genuine interest in Rose and Clara's story, asked intelligent questions about the foundation, and shared funny childhood stories with Victor. His children, Luke and Aaron, got along very well with Clara, and the 3 spent a good part of the evening talking about music and movies. "Victor," Peter said, as they were having coffee in the living room, "I've never seen you so happy. Rose and Clara are a gift in your life." "They truly are," Victor agreed, looking at Rose with so much love that she felt butterflies in her stomach. When Peter and his children left, Rose felt accepted and integrated in a way she hadn't expected. "They are wonderful," she said to Victor. "Your family is very special." "Our family," Victor corrected. "You and Clara are part of it now." That night, Rose realized she had found not only love, but also a place where she truly belonged. For the first time in a long time, the future seemed full of infinite possibilities. 6 months after dinner with Peter and his children, life had taken a shape Rose had never dared to dream of. The New Beginnings Foundation had already helped over 200 women rebuild their lives, offering everything from professional training to psychological and legal support. Rose had become a reference in the field of social assistance, being invited for lectures and consulting in other organizations. Clara, at 18, had transformed into a confident and determined young woman. Her project to raise awareness about abusive relationships had already visited over 50 schools, and she maintained a YouTube channel that reached thousands of teenagers every month. More importantly, she had learned to value herself and recognize the signs of a healthy relationship. "Mum," Clara said one afternoon, arriving from college with a different smile on her face, "I want to introduce you to someone." Rose looked up from the foundation paperwork she was reviewing at the kitchen table. "Someone?" "A young man. His name is Luke. We've been talking for a few weeks and, well, I think I like him." Rose's heart tightened for an instant, memories of Clara's relationship with Mark coming back to mind. But she quickly calmed herself, observing the lightness on her daughter's face, so different from the tension she carried when she was with her ex-boyfriend. "Tell me about him," Rose said, closing the documents and giving her full attention to her daughter. "He's in his 2nd semester of psychology, wants to work with family therapy. He's kind, funny, respects my time and my boundaries. Yesterday he said he wants to meet you and Victor, because we are the most important people in my life." Rose smiled, recognizing the signs of a mature and respectful young man. "When do you want to bring him for dinner? Seriously? You'll let me?" "Of course, daughter. I trust your judgment now. You've learned to value yourself." That night, Rose told Victor about her conversation with Clara. "A new boyfriend," Victor said, smiling. "How do you feel about that?" "Nervous, but optimistic. She's very different this time. More secure, more resolute, and the fact that she wants to introduce him to us is a good sign. It means she's learned to value our opinion and has nothing to hide." The introductory dinner was scheduled for the following Saturday. When Luke arrived, Rose was immediately impressed. He was a polite young man who looked at Clara with genuine admiration and respectful affection. During dinner, he asked questions about Rose's work at the foundation, about Victor's projects, and showed real interest in Clara's achievements. "Clara told me about her project in schools," Luke said. "I think her courage to share such a difficult experience to help other people is incredible. He even helped me prepare one of the presentations," Clara said, looking at Luke with affection. "He has an interesting perspective on behavioral psychology." Rose and Victor exchanged satisfied glances. It was obvious that this young man respected and admired Clara, encouraging her projects instead of trying to control her. "Luke," Victor said, "what do you plan to do after college?" "I want to specialize in therapy for victims of domestic violence," Luke replied. "I think that's an area where I can make a real difference in people's lives." Felt a wave of approval. Luke not only respected Clara's past, but wanted to dedicate his professional life to helping people who had gone through similar situations. After Luke left, Clara sat on the sofa between Rose and Victor. "So, what did you think?" "I think he's perfect for you," Rose said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "He's a special young man," Victor agreed. "He treats you with the respect you deserve." "I think so too," Clara smiled. "And you know what else? For the first time, I don't feel any fear or insecurity in a relationship. I know I am valuable and that I deserve to be treated well." Rose felt tears of pride well up in her eyes. Seeing her daughter so secure and confident was the fulfillment of all her dreams as a mother. A few weeks later, the definitive resolution of Mark's case finally arrived. The lawyer Alan Miller called with the news that Mark had been convicted of domestic violence and threats, receiving a sentence of 2 years in a semi-open prison regime and 5 years of a protective order against Clara. "It's over," Clara said when she heard the sentence. "It's finally over." She cried. that night, but they were tears of relief and liberation. Rose comforted her, knowing that those tears symbolized the definitive end of a painful chapter and the complete beginning of a new life. It was around this time that Victor made a decision that had been maturing for months. On a Thursday evening, after Clara had gone out to meet Luke, he approached Rose, who was preparing reports for the foundation. "Rose," he said, with a seriousness that made her stop what she was doing, "I need to talk to you about something very important." Rose's heart quickened. "What is it?" Victor knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "I know our story began unexpectedly, and that perhaps outsiders don't understand how two such different worlds met. But I also know that you are the love of my life, and that I don't want to spend a single day without you by my side." Rose felt tears form in her eyes. "Victor, let me finish," he said, smiling nervously. "In all these months, you've transformed not just my house, but my entire life. You taught me what true love is, showed me the value of simplicity, dedication, family. With you, I discovered that success means nothing if we have no one to share it with." Victor took a small velvet box from his pocket. "Rose, will you marry me?" Rose was silent for a few seconds, observing the simple but elegant ring, and especially Victor's eyes full of love and hope. "Victor," she whispered, "are you sure? I don't have money. I don't come from an important family. I don't have a university education." "Rose," Victor interrupted, "you have everything that matters. You have a generous heart, incredible strength, a wisdom that isn't learned in universities. You have a wonderful daughter who taught me what it means to be part of a family. And most importantly, you have a genuine love that makes me want to be a better person every day." Rose looked at the man kneeling before her, the same man who had been merely her employer for 10 years, and who was now her best friend, her companion, her great love. "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I want to marry you." Victor slid the ring onto Rose's finger and kissed her with a passion that held all the love they had built together. When Clara arrived home that night and saw the ring on her mother's finger, she screamed with joy and hugged them both at the same time. "Finally, I've been waiting for this for months," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You approve?" Victor asked, emotional. "I completely approve. You're perfect together. And now we're going to be a real family, officially." The wedding was scheduled for 3 months later, a simple but elegant ceremony with the participation of Victor's family, some close friends of Rose, colleagues from the foundation, and of course Luke, who was already part of the family. On the morning of the wedding, as Rose got ready with Clara's help, she stopped in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. It was the same Rose, but transformed, confident, radiant, complete. "Mum," Clara said, adjusting Rose's simple but beautiful veil, "you look beautiful." "Thank you, daughter, and thank you for giving me the strength to accept this love when it arrived." "You deserve all the happiness in the world," Clara replied, "and Victor is perfect for you." The ceremony was emotional. When Victor saw Rose entering the small church, his eyes filled with tears. She was simple and elegant, in a discreet white dress that enhanced her natural beauty. During the vows, Victor said, "Rose, you taught me that true love isn't about finding someone to complete you, but about finding someone with whom you want to be complete. I promise to love you, to take care of you and Clara, and to build with you a family based on respect, understanding, and true love." Rose, in turn, said, "Victor, you appeared in my life when I needed it most, not just as a savior, but as a companion. You taught me that I can be cared for without losing my independence, that I can be loved without diminishing myself. I promise to share all moments of my life with you, to support your dreams as you supported mine, and to build by your side a home full of love and joy." There wasn't a dry eye in the small congregation. The party was at home, in the apartment that had been Rose's workplace and was now truly the family's home. Peter and his children came from the rural town. Colleagues from the foundation naturally mingled with Victor's entrepreneur friends, and Luke helped Clara coordinate all the details. During the party, Rose looked around and was moved to see all those worlds harmoniously meeting. It was proof that true love truly transcends all barriers. "Mrs. Anderson," Victor whispered in Rose's ear as they danced, "how do you feel?" "I feel like I finally found my place in the world," she replied. "And you?" "I feel like my life truly began today." Months after the wedding, the family's routine was completely established. Rose managed the foundation with mastery. Victor expanded his businesses to include more social projects, and Clara began college studying psychology, following in Luke's footsteps. One evening they were all dining together, Rose, Victor, Clara, and Luke, who was now a constant presence in the house. "You know," Clara said, observing the family around the table, "sometimes I think about how different our lives were 2 years ago." "How so?" Rose asked. 2 years ago, I was lost in a relationship that was destroying me. You were exhausted and alone, taking care of everything and everyone. And Victor was isolated in his world, far from any real connection." "And today?" Victor asked, curious. "Today we are a real family. You found love and professional fulfillment, Mum. Victor found a family and a greater purpose for his life. And I found my voice, my strength. And now I'm lucky enough to have found true love too." Luke smiled and held Clara's hand across the table. "And I found a family that welcomed me as a son from day one," he said. Rose looked around the table at these people who had become the center of her universe. Victor, the man who made her feel complete and valued every day. Clara, the daughter who had overcome terrible traumas and become a strong and compassionate woman. Luke, the young man who loved her daughter with the respect and tenderness she deserved. "Do you know what moves me the most?" Rose said. "It's that our story shows it's never too late to start over, that no matter how old you are or what circumstances you're living through, it's always possible to find love, happiness, and build the family you always dreamed of having." Victor raised his wineglass. "A toast, then, to new beginnings, to second chances, to the family we chose to build together, to the love that transforms," Rose added. "To the strength to overcome any obstacle," Clara said, "and to the happiness that comes when we least expect it," Luke concluded. They clinked glasses, and in that moment, looking at the people she loved, Rose knew she had found everything she had always searched for, without knowing she was searching. She had found not only romantic love, but also professional fulfillment, family peace, and most importantly, she had found herself. When everyone went to sleep that night, Rose stayed for a few minutes alone on the balcony, looking at the city lights. She thought about everything that had changed since that morning, almost 2 years ago when she arrived at work, worried about Clara and Victor truly looked at her for the first time. A twist of fate at a subway station had changed 3 lives forever, and what had begun as a medical emergency transformed into the beginning of the most loving and united family any of them could have imagined. Victor approached from behind and hugged her, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "I'm thinking that sometimes life gives us exactly what we need at the moment we least expect it, and that true love isn't about age or money or social status. It's about finding someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you exactly like that." "And you see me for who I truly am?" Victor asked, gently kissing her neck. "I do. I see a generous man who opened himself to love when he thought he couldn't love anymore. I see someone who makes me want to be the best version of myself every day." They remained embraced in silence, contemplating the future they would build together. A future full of projects at the foundation, of watching Clara grow even more and build her own family, of growing old side by side, sharing small and big moments. That night, Rose slept in Victor's arms with the absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world, no longer as the dedicated housekeeper or the struggling single mother, but as Rose Anderson, beloved wife, respected professional, proud mother, and most importantly, a complete and happy woman. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Rose, Victor, and Clara has touched your hearts. This narrative shows us that it's never too late to start over, that true love can emerge when we least expect it, and that inner strength can lead us to unimaginable achievements. For more emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications. Leave a like if this story inspired you, and in the comments share your own experiences of overcoming challenges and new beginnings. We'll see you in the next story, always ready to bring you accounts that celebrate the human capacity to transform and find happiness.